My husband Alex, 32 male, and I, 29 female, have been married for 3 years, together for 5. He has a longtime best friend, Jack, 35 male, that has been in his life since before my husband and I met. I like him well enough. The two of them have always been close and spent such a large amount of time together that at one point, I was almost starting to suspect that my husband was lying about his whereabouts and was actually with another woman. I would randomly ask him to FaceTime me or send me a photo as proof that he was where he said he was, and he would always comply. Jack has been talking about building his dream home for a few years now. The guy's pretty well off and has roped my husband into his planning process, saying Alex will be over constantly anyway, so he should have some say in things. This has been a passion project so many years in the making that I never thought it would actually come to fruition. Still, Jack and my husband came to me about a month ago with requests for Jack to stay at our place while his previous house sold, and he worked on apartment hunting to tide him over until the build was complete. So I agreed to let him stay for no longer than a month. The official date he was supposed to leave was July 30th. His house is sold, and he's toured a few apartments, but from what I can tell, he hasn't made a move to rent anything. I continually asked my husband for an update leading up to July 30th and wasn't provided with much. So last night, I told Jack he has until the end of this week to figure something out, as he's already overstayed his welcome. Both he and my husband immediately lashed out, saying I was a terrible host and that he needed more time than that to sort out an apartment. I said I had already given him a month. My husband currently isn't speaking to me. Am I the idiot for putting my foot down? He's well off and yet has to stay with you while he builds his dream home? Yeah, well-off people can still be cheapskates. Not the idiot. You opened the door for a discussion about Jack staying longer when you asked your husband about his plans in the days leading up to the 30th, and he chose to be evasive. But why are you concerned about this fight when there's the bigger problem of needing to prove your husband isn't having an affair? Not having trust between you two, to the point that you all exchange photos of proof, is a big problem. Oh, honey, your husband is having at least an emotional affair. He may very well be having a physical one as well. It sounds like this situation shows that you need to figure out what's happening between them. Don't turn a blind eye any longer. You deserve to be your husband's number one, but it sounds like your husband already has a number one. So I suspect when the friend goes, the husband may follow. Sorry, OP. Somebody hold my Dr. Pepper while I jump into this pool of conclusions over here. Your husband and Jack are having an affair. Please update if Heck, that's my relationship nickname for husband and Jack, starts referring to the dream house they're building together as our house, or if they come to you with a convoluted story about how they did find an apartment, but it's for women only, and so maybe you could stay there for a while. Something is definitely up, OP. I recommend paying close attention the next few days, and I suggest you get a nanny cam if possible when you aren't around. I've read 3 paragraphs about a snippet of your marriage, and I'm second-guessing things. There's probably more. It genuinely sounds like your husband is just using your home as a crash pad until his boyfriend's house is ready, and then he'll bounce. I have a young child and an infant. The transition from 1 to 2 has been tough, especially with a newborn. My husband has been an amazing help, but he had to go on a business trip. Going on this trip would ensure he didn't have to travel for at least a year, so I told him to go as it was only a week. 4 days in, I was exhausted and overwhelmed. I got maybe an hour or 2 of sleep each night, combined with each kid's needs, housework, and me semi-transitioning back to work. I have no help outside my nanny, no family in the area, and friends are busy with work. Our nanny's also transitioning into caring for both kids, with a pay raise, now $30 an hour. She's mainly cared for my eldest since birth. He's gone to camp this summer, so she's worked about 25 hours a week, still compensated for her usual 36. I was fried and wiped, offering her overtime to come in when my son was at camp to watch the baby for 4 hours so I could nap. I told her if she didn't want to, it was fine, and I'd try to find a sitter. She insisted she could do it. I gave her the condition that I was not to be woken up unless there was a true emergency. Someone is ill or injured, there's a fire, or the baby won't take her bottle, mainly breastfed, but usually will take a bottle, or is inconsolable. She agreed. Remember that she's worked for us since our eldest was a baby. She has experience with newborns and knows what comes with that. I finally fall into a much-needed deep sleep. It felt like 5 minutes. It turned out to be 30. I'm being shaken awake. At first I was groggy and disoriented. The nanny was leaning over me saying the baby had a blowout. It took me a minute to come to my senses, and I finally said, "Okay." She asked if she should have a bath, do I want the sheets thrown in the wash, etc. I then realized there was no true emergency. It's normal for babies at this age to have that happen, and I've told her in the past, if my eldest wets the bed, just leave the sheets in the laundry room and bathe him. She just kept staring at me, so I snapped, "Do what you would do for eldest kid. Why did you wake me up?" She got defensive and said she was just checking. I reminded her of our deal, and she walked out. I tried to fall back asleep, but couldn't, as my baby was crying from getting a bath and being changed. I would have slept through it if I hadn't woken up, as they were in another room. I always wake up if she's beside me. Finally, the baby stopped crying, but I was wide awake and couldn't fall back asleep. After an hour, I gave up, went and grabbed my baby, dismissing the nanny. She texted me later saying I disrespected her, and she didn't deserve that. I told her I was sorry for my tone, but that wasn't an emergency, and it defeated the purpose of me getting a break. I paid her for the full 4 hours, even though she was only there for 2, as I did choose to dismiss her. She says I'm the mom, so it shouldn't be a burden. It's not a burden, but I needed the break, and she was being paid $45 an hour, overtime rate. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I'm no nanny. I'm a 22-year-old child-free dude. I wouldn't wake you up for that. Literally, what else would she think you'd want her to do with the baby in that situation? If you paid her to let you sleep, that's all she had to do. I know it's the last thing you need, but I'd start interviewing new nannies ASAP. OP pays the nanny fat, gives her explicit instructions as to why OP wanted to be left alone, gets angry when the nanny does not follow the instructions, sends her home and still pays the nanny for the agreed upon hours. OP is not the idiot at all. OMG, why have kids if you can't handle them alone? I'm sorry, but why is your older kid away at camp? I would never trust anyone with my child, especially with how everything is in this world. As for nanny, for her to shake you like that is a very good reason to wake up in a bad mood. You both are the idiots. I have no help outside my nanny? Entitled much? LOL? Do you know how lucky you are to have a nanny? Most people don't have that luxury. I just couldn't get past this. Onto your issues. Use your words. I'm exhausted. Do not wake me up unless the sky's exploding. Repeat. Have nanny repeat it back to you. Go to sleep. Don't snap at nanny. Jobs for her are a dime a dozen these days. I'm currently pregnant with my first child. My fiance and I collectively decided to hold off telling people for at least 3 months for the following reasons. I didn't want to jump the gun in case it didn't work out. My sister was in mid-pregnancy with her first after struggling with conceiving for 7 years, and we didn't want to steal the thunder. So the baby was born and all was well. My fiance and I decided to hold off another month so all attention could be on my sister and nephew. We announced it to his friends and family in the meantime, and everyone was super thrilled. A few days ago, I told my parents, and they were over the moon. I sent out a nice email with a little e-card and some sonogram pics to the family members that are spread out and that I don't see regularly and can't tell in person, my sister included, as she lives in a different state than I do. We got a lot of congratulations and excitement from almost everyone, except my sister and her husband. She called in tears, tearing into me for planning this and stealing attention from her son that took her so long to have. I told her this wasn't planned, it just happened. That made things worse, as I'm significantly younger than her, and then it turned into her ranting at me about how nice it must be to be able to get pregnant when she had to fight to get pregnant, struggle, in her words, actually worked to have a family. Her husband was in the background and backing her up. I told her we had even taken an extra month to wait to tell people, specifically so she and my nephew could have undivided celebration and attention. Then I ended the call. My fiance and his family are on our side. My family's a little too OMG new baby to gauge properly, but my sister and her husband think I'm an idiot. Am I here? Not the idiot. Drama queen detected. Your sister may not be in a clear state of mind due to hormones, exhaustion, and potentially even postpartum depression. Don't take it too personally, and let her have time to sit with it for a few days before trying to talk again. You've done nothing wrong, and she doesn't get to decide when someone else can get pregnant or under what circumstances. It was considerate of you to wait as long as you did. Infertility struggles cause trauma. It's a little harsh to jump to drama queen immediately. This sounds more like a projection of her struggles and resentment for her own perceived failure to conceive being pushed onto OP, rather than her being a drama queen. You waited 3 months while your sister was still pregnant, and then 1 month after the kid. Did she expect you to wait until you had your kid? And then what? Just say it was adopted? She's just mad because OP got a kid the way she wishes she had. It's jealousy. I can't get people wanting attention like they're in some sort of real-life competition or something. Anyhow, maybe it's just me. Also, postpartum depression is no excuse to act crappy. Wish you a healthy pregnancy. Ignore toxic people. They're not worthy of your attention. My fiance, male 25, was raised very differently from me, female 26. I grew up playing sports and from an early age, grew to appreciate my talents and respect other work ethics. To realize other individuals succeeding didn't take anything away from me, and giving 100% doesn't always mean success in life. I was given lessons about failure on the field and in the classroom, making me comfortable with loss. My fiance, on the other hand, has a more challenging time than me with this notion. He grew up in a small town with a graduating class of 70. In his high school, everyone knew everyone, and they definitely knew him. In his household, succeeding and excelling were all that mattered. His parents never taught him how to fail or cope with not always being the best. School was such an important issue in their household that he wasn't required to do any household work, cook or do laundry. He just needed to bring home A's. He loved the praise, the recognition, and the accolades he received for his achievements. And anyone should, right? Well, he doesn't cope with not being the best or receiving praise the best way. My fiance dropped out of college because he wanted to be the best in his hometown, to be amongst others who were smarter, more ambitious, harder working individuals than him, and couldn't handle not being on top. He couldn't handle figuring out new study methods. He couldn't help feeling average. He explained that he'd hate not going through school being great, and left, to which his family blamed me. From the outside, it looked as though he met me. We got serious. He left school. His family had no idea what could have changed besides him meeting me. It led to a hard integration process with his family. Now he's seen his former classmates graduate and start their careers, and he feels inadequate. He won't take a job he feels is beneath him because he's better than that. But the jobs he's interested in, he can't get because of his lack of a degree. I've attempted to motivate him to go back to school, but he's frankly afraid of the challenges and not succeeding the way he wants. I'm not sure how to encourage him to move past this, as excelling and being on top is all he knows. We have a daughter that just turned 2, and she's around that age where we're starting to implement our values and morals in her, to which she has a foundation to make her own choices. Of course, I want her to strive to be the best, to believe in herself, and to always go above and beyond what she's comfortable with, but I don't want her to crash and burn under pressure. I want her to respect others' talents, be comfortable with not always receiving praise, and be the best at everything she does. I want her to strive because she wants to, not because she needs validation or recognition. Am I the idiot for not wanting to raise her like my fiance was? Not the idiot, but your jobless fiance is. Not taking a job that's beneath him? There is no job beneath him, as he's a person and has a family to help support him. That's just code for lazy and entitled. Stop buying his BS. You've put up with his nonsense far longer than you should have. He needs therapy, badly. I don't usually deal in black and white with parenting. I think there's a lot of gray area on this one. You're right, he's wrong. Really though, therapy. You are the idiot for denying your own values by getting together with your fiancé, who's completely incompatible. You two are headed for a divisive co-parenting fight for the next 2 decades, which will only hurt your child, who will be stuck in the middle of it. Unless your fiancé gets therapy and then has a come-to-Jesus moment, there's no answer here. You can't defend your values unless you defend your values by waiting until you find someone who shares them. Agree. His child needs him to provide for her, but he won't take jobs or go back to school. He's not adding anything to this partnership. He is the average loser he thinks he is. He needs to get over it and provide for his family. I, 34 male, have a sister, Caitlin, 21. We have a decent age gap. We're technically half siblings, but never used the term. Her dad left before she was born. Our mom died when I was 22 and Caitlin was little. As I essentially helped my mom raise her, I gained custody and continued to raise her. I adopted her, and while we still refer to each other as brother and sister, she will always be my first kid. I changed her diapers and started clothing and feeding her long before our mom died, as our mom needed financial help. I was there for every nightmare and temper tantrum and survived the hormonal teenager years. She's my kid, no doubting that. Caitlin is at college now but still lives with me on breaks. I've been dating my current girlfriend, Abby, 32, for 8 months. We've begun discussing the future, what we see for ourselves, etc. I mentioned that it was important that Caitlin always have a home with me, that I'd always want a room set aside for her, etc. Abby was somewhat hesitant and asked why. I told her that if anything happened, I want Caitlin to have a safe place to land. Abby doesn't like that. She asked what happens when we have kids. I said I could care for all of them, but Caitlin is my first kid, and she'd be a priority, same as the rest. I'd do the same for any kid we had. Abby got angry and said our kids would be my real kids, and they should come before Caitlin. I refused. She told me this was wrong, and I'd be a horrible father if I acted like this. Our hypothetical kids deserved better, etc. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. This woman just did you a favor. She gave you an out before trapping you with kids. Bail on this person now because her opinion on this will never change. She doesn't understand, doesn't want to understand, and it'll only worsen. OP, you think it's a coincidence she waited until now to say this? Even though she almost certainly felt like that from the beginning. This is the red flag you need to move on. This isn't someone you want to build a life with. Your relationship essentially ended the moment she said real kids. You can hem and haw and delude yourself into thinking that you can look past this, but the resentment is always going to be there. Caitlin is your daughter. Your partner doesn't see her as your daughter and believes that biological children, who don't exist, are real, and that any child who comes from alternate situations, like adoption, is not a real child. That is a fundamental incompatibility with who you are as a person. You are the idiot. Why would your presumably adult sister need the same attention that a small child, who isn't even alive yet, gets? Caitlin would most likely be living her own independent life by that point and not need her older brother to prioritize her the way he would his hypothetical baby. Here's the thing. I think OP needs to think through what it means to have a room dedicated to an adult, not now but at some point, in your home. At some point there has to be some sort of reasonable balance and expectation that the little sister is responsible for and can manage her own life. Good luck to all of you.